Hi, welcome to session 5. So in session 5, in the original sessions, we did a bit of a recap because we did the 4 sessions, we had a recap and then there was a break and then we followed on with sessions 6 to 10. So just to share with you what we looked at in our review, in case you'd like to have a review of the sessions that you've done so far. So you might not have done them consecutively, but there you go. This is just a quick overview of what was covered in sessions 1 to 4. So I'll just share the screen. There you go. So in our recap session, we did a bit of a meditation, as we did in every session. And then we had a little chat about what we'd done in the previous session and what we'd been doing at home since. And then we had a little look at the sessions that we'd done so far. So we went back and just reminded ourselves really of what we'd covered. So in Introduction to Mindfulness, which was session 1, we looked at what is mindfulness and what does it involve doing. So we looked at some different definitions of what is mindfulness and agreed that it is essentially living in the moment, drawing the awareness back to the moment without judgment. So very simple concept with lots and lots of ramifications. So living in the moment where we're not worrying about the future, we're not worrying about the past, we're not ruminating and what ifing and making ourselves anxious into the process. And what does it involve doing? So bringing ourselves back into the present moment can be done in a lot of different ways. It can be done via mindfulness meditations, which are very strengthening for your mindfulness muscle. But there are lots and lots of practices that we can do to develop mindfulness that we can do throughout the day. So it might involve drinking a cup of tea mindfully and just rather than being absorbed on a screen or watching the TV or talking to somebody and not really thinking about your cup of tea. It involves just being with that cup of tea and savouring it, the tastes, the smells, the sensations, and so on. So we're living right there, right now, doing what we're doing and noticing it without judgment. Because a lot of the time we drink cups of tea and we don't notice it at all. It just goes down while we're thinking about something else. We're plotting what we're going to do next, or we're worrying about something that happened in the past, or what have you. So little techniques like drinking a cup of tea mindfully, or putting on hand cream mindfully, or doing some mindful walking, or going out and having a look around the garden mindfully. Lots and lots of ways that we can just be in the moment, feeling what we're feeling, seeing what we're seeing, just experiencing the moment rather than being in the head, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, being worried, creating anxiety, etc. And why would we choose to develop mindfulness? So lots and lots of benefits for mindfulness, and people come to it for all sorts of different reasons, but it could be because you just want to improve your life. It could be because you feel life's passing you by, because you're racing around and on autopilot, not thinking about what you're doing at the moment, but thinking about the past, thinking about the future, and getting very stressed. So we live in a very stressful time, and mindfulness can be a way of just stepping out of the constant stress, business, thinking, to give ourselves a little bit of peace, a bit of enjoyment, and to create some more happy hormones. lots of other reasons, obviously, but just in a nutshell, those are the sort of things that we talked about, and obviously there are lots more. And then in session 2, it was following on from session 1, just thinking a little bit more about mindfulness, like what are the benefits of mindfulness. So we were talking about lowered stress levels, lowered blood pressure, better quality of sleep, more contentment, more happiness in life, better relationships with other people, and lots of other things that it can positively impact. And we talked about autopilot. I've already mentioned autopilot, but I'm sure you're very familiar with living your life on autopilot. So you arrive at a destination and you think, hang on a second, how did I get here? Oh, I was doing it on autopilot. So because when we're driving, we tend to be thinking about other things. We're not necessarily taking note of what we're doing. We do things on autopilot, or eating, or making food, or lots and lots of things we routinely do on autopilot. And it can be a really useful device because it allows us to get stuff done. But pitfalls of it are that if we spend all our time on autopilot, we kind of miss the moment. We're too busy putting ourselves on autopilot so that we can ruminate, worry, stress, plot, worry about the past, etc., etc. So pitfalls of autopilot are that you're kind of missing out on the moment and what's going on in the moment, what's good about it. And in the face-to-face sessions and on the original online sessions, we did a chocolate meditation. Some people do raisin meditation or eating a piece of fruit mindfully. In most of your introductory courses to mindfulness, then you'll come across an eating meditation where you just eat something slowly, mindfully, noticing the food, the smells, the tastes, the textures, and taking little bites and actually thinking about how does that taste and how does it feel in my mouth, and which can sound a bit bizarre, really. Why would you do that? Then it's done because it's an illustration of how we routinely do things without thinking about them and therefore miss out. So often with a box of chocolates, we might taste the first one, perhaps we taste the last one. The ones in the middle, they go down while we're thinking about something else. So obviously we could get a lot more enjoyment out of our box of chocolates if we took more notice of what we're eating, or day to day in our meals. And obviously if we eat with more mindfulness, then we tend to eat food in better quantities. Sometimes we can eat too much because we're not thinking about how much we eat, or we might eat things that are not particularly good for us or whatever. So mindfulness can help. Eating mindfulness can help with keeping a healthy weight and a healthy body, healthy eating habits generally, amongst other things. And session 3 then, that was called Learning to Choose, and it was talking about the difference between reacting and responding to things that happen. So for example, we were talking about some frustrating things that happen in life. For example, one of the most common mentioned in our area was a particular doctor's surgery has got a very long telephone queue. When you ring at 8 o'clock in the morning, which is as soon as the phones go on, and you are 116th in the queue. And for most people that is quite a big stressor, understandably. But we're talking about how can you respond to that rather than react, or to similar situations. So with the telephone one, you can respond to it by taking a step back, thinking, well, I know this is going to happen, so therefore I'm going to put my phone on speaker and I'm going to do some knitting, or I am going to read the paper, or I'm going to get some mindful movement done while I'm waiting. And you're responding then and thinking, actually, it's no good seething and our blood pressure going through the roof and huffing and puffing, and then perhaps, moaning when the phone's finally answered. So that kind of thing. Or the same thing can be applied to when you're waiting for a train. Train's delayed, oh no, reacting, or taking a step back thinking, there isn't anything I can do about it. I just need to wait for the next train. So I may as well make the most of the time that I've got, do something productive, or just sit there and meditate for a bit while you're waiting, because ultimately you're a lot better off for responding rather than reacting. And so are the people around you, probably, because you're not moaning to them about how rubbish the train lines are and so on. So primary experience and suffering, and secondary experience is suffering. Is something we talked about in detail briefly. Primary experience, what you're experiencing. Often there's not a lot you can do about your primary experience. Something happens, you stub your toe. Then we can because we're human beings, add to our suffering. So we've stubbed our toe and it hurts. But then we add to our suffering by then starting to think, oh, why on earth did they leave that out? And I keep telling them that they shouldn't leave that out. I'm going to stub my toe on it. And or maybe it's because I stub my toe because I'm so clumsy. Or maybe it's because I'm losing coordination. Or why am I such a wimp? It shouldn't hurt me this much stubbing my toe. And so we create kind of extra suffering for ourselves because we don't leave it there with the experience. We add extra problems on top and emotions, and therefore give ourselves an even harder time than we're having already. And then the last thing in session 3 was the differences between feelings and emotions. So often we think feelings and emotions are the same thing, but in mindfulness we can kind of separate them out a little bit. So feelings are what an experience feels like, the primary experience. So like stubbing your toe, ow, it feels painful because I just stubbed my toe. But emotions are what we then choose to do with our feelings. So are we then going to add some more suffering, some secondary suffering, by getting angry, by starting to beat ourselves up, by starting to shout at other people, etc., etc. So can we take a step back and decide about how to deal with that situation? So yeah, useful stuff, quite tricky after years and years of responding automatically to stuff. And then in session 4, we talked about coming to the senses. So we talked about doing mode and being mode. Doing mode, where you're physically doing things and where your mind is doing things. Thinking, doing. Being mode, as an alternative, is where we try to take ourselves back into our body, into our senses, out of our head. Try and take a bit of a rest from our busyness, not just in body, but also in mind. So that, the mind plotting, planning, worrying, stressing. But being mode could be doing a little bit of mindful walking, or it could be doing some mindful meditation, or it could be doing some drawing. So it can be where you're doing something, but not the sort of stressy, busy stuff that we're doing all the time. Being mode. So being much more aware of what we're doing and what our senses are bringing us. How does that smell? How does it touch? How does it feel? What does it look like? and so on, and focusing more on just that thing, that moment. And then the doing mind, the being mind, same sort of thing. Doing mind, plotting, planning, solving problems, getting things organised. Being mind is just being. Just, what am I sensing? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? What's my body doing right now? And we can start by thinking, well, we need to be doing stuff though, don't we? All the time. So what is the point of taking ourselves out of doing mode, where we're getting stuff done, and thinking mode, where we're getting stuff processed? And yeah, we lead busy lives, and we do need to do stuff. We do need to think about stuff, but we also need to give ourselves a break where we can, because we do tend to burn out. People tend to have problems sleeping because their mind won't switch off. The body can become very tense, very contracted, because we're thinking, we're worrying, we're hunching, we're holding ourselves very stiffly, which is not a very healthy way to go on, and it doesn't tend to make people that happy. So yeah, all good stuff. Once you can learn to see that, and perhaps do little bits to introduce a little bit of being rather than always being doing. So downsides of too much doing, which is what I've just said, and benefits of spending more time directly engaging with the senses is, I've touched on it already, but it's a way of actually experiencing our life, of living our life to the full, because there is a life going on around us, outside of our head, away from our screen, our phone. There's real life happening there. We do tend to miss it a lot of the time because we're so busy. Engaging with the senses is a really good way to engage with what's going on right now, and it's also a way of getting the body into relaxation mode as opposed to stress mode, and that's when the body starts to heal itself and to create lots of positive hormones. So it has all sorts of positive impacts doing that. So there you go. We had a chat then about the balance, really, between being and doing. What's our balance like, and what can we do about it if we're not happy with the balance we've got? And talked about doing things at a slower pace so that we can have a bit more time to take note of what's going on around us and to enjoy things a bit more, perhaps. And then we just had a look at the sessions that are to come. So in sessions 6 to 10, then these are the topics that are covered in sessions 6 to 10. So working with the thoughts and choosing whether to get on board with the thought. So obviously we'll talk a lot about that in session 6, but basically learning to just take a little step back from our thought processes and to be able to notice that our thoughts are just thoughts. They don't always make sense, they're not always true, and we do have a choice whether we want to get on board with things or whether we don't. A bit like a train or a bus, really. It pulls up at the station. Do we want to get on it and ride, or don't we? Do we want to just wait for the next bus, see where that goes instead? So that can be quite a liberating thing to learn, that we've got a choice over whether to go with our thoughts or not. And then in session 7, working with difficult experiences. So, difficult things happen. Again, a lot of things in life are beyond our control, and a lot of things we can't do much about, except we can do something about how we react or respond and deal with difficulties in life. And mindfulness can help with that. 3 different techniques that we talk about in that session. Noticing the good things, balancing the negativity bias. So just noting that as human beings, we do have a natural negativity bias. We're much more inclined to see negative things, to see dangerous things, to see things that are a threat. It's been essential for our survival. But again, it's a balance, and it can be that we can become too negative. It's very easy, particularly if you watch the news or look at the media, read the headlines, etc. It can just seem like everything is very negative. And obviously for people who are suffering with anxiety, depression, it can look as though things are very negative in the world. And it's useful to be able to notice that we've got a negativity bias, and to be able to start to redress the balance a little bit if we can, by noticing good things, because there are good things in life as well. Even in dire circumstances, then we can actually attune ourselves to look for the good things, so that it redresses the balance a little bit and helps us to deal with the bad things. And then kindfulness is a big thing with mindfulness, to ourselves, to other people. So, and that again is a case of becoming aware of how kind you are to yourself, probably not, and starting to try and redress the balance a little bit, being a little bit kinder to yourself. And in turn, then, being a little bit more compassionate with other people, choosing how we respond. And then in the last session of the 10, then we look at how we want to continue with, or to deepen our practice. So, yeah, there you go. So a bit of a recap. Hopefully you will be getting something from the sessions. I hope so. So that's all for now then. So hopefully see you in one of the other sessions. Bye for now.